Welcome to the James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. What's going on with kids these days? We had kid killers throughout history. The question is it happening more frequently, or are we just hearing about all of them because of social media and whatnot? You know, you think back to the Lizzie Bordens of history. Kid killers are not new. It's just, if there's a rash of them, what's going on? What can we do about it? How can we recognize it? Let's ask someone who looks at people's brains for a living. Leigh Richardson's back on the James Show. Welcome back here. And the two big stories that are on our minds today is, of course, Georgia, 4 people dead in a school shooting, 9 others injured. But also in the Louisiana story that didn't get as much attention, there was an 11-year-old who committed a double murder against 2 adults. What is the deal with evil children going on killing sprees, Leigh?
Well, you know, it's an interesting thought to think that an 11-year-old would have access to a method and a means to kill 2 adults. And, of course, then where is that 11-year-old mentally? But I think that what is going on is kids today, they're much more stressed out. They do not have the psychological safety that I had as a kid growing up. And I think when you don't feel safe, then you get defensive and you strike out.
Let's talk about that psychological safety, because the world that these kids are growing up in is definitely more safe than the world that we grew up in. And God forbid our parents and grandparents, they had to deal with things like, polio and scarlet fever and, wild animal attacks and whatnot. The world seems to be safer than ever. How are we coming away with the opposite level of anxiety?
Well, there's a lot more of that psychological safety, I think. In many ways, the world is not safer. If you look at social media and how that's used, that has created some impact on mental health, and that there's plenty of studies that support that. And you think about it, when you and I were a kid, if somebody had something snide to say to us, they'd catch us in the hall at school and they would say it. Maybe one other person heard it. Now, if somebody has something snide to say to someone else, they'll get on social media and they'll blast it. And probably 100 people will hear it. So the impact is much, much greater. And I think that we live in times that I think technology has a ton of good, but I also think it has a ton of bad. And I think we've trained those young minds that they need gratification instantly. And if you want something, you put it on social media, or they don't pick up the phone and call anybody. They text. And we're training that brain to short circuit, and looking for the shortcut. And that is not brain health.
Okay, so the other thing that bothers me about these stories is I believe in both of them, the parents seem to be somewhat responsible, or attempting to be responsible. The parents had contacted authorities, I believe it was almost a year ago, because he had made a Facebook post or some sort of mention that he wanted to shoot up a school. So the authorities even come in and check on it, but they can't really do anything if he hasn't done anything. So, just alerting the authorities, that hasn't been enough.
Well, it's my understanding, and you're more in the news than I am, but it was my understanding that the parents did not alert the 14-year-old in Georgia, that the FBI picked up on his postings online and went to the house and met with the father and met with the son and recognized that there were guns and weapons in the house, but the father said he does not have unsupervised access to them. And you're right. The police, the FBI, they did what they needed to do because there wasn't a next step. They checked it out, and there was no reason for immediate action to be taken. But, that's a red flag. And I think when we see a red flag, we need to have a next step. And the next step would be a neuropsychological assessment. And through that, perhaps, I feel pretty confident that there would have been some information gathered from that might have been useful in the future, turned over to the school that the child was attending. So I think that, but you're right. In some cases, parents do recognize it, but they don't know what to do with it. And we really don't have the policies in place. We don't have the procedures. We're just now waking up and realizing, oh, we got some real issues with mental health. 1 out of 4 young people suffers from depression or anxiety. And suicide is the second leading cause of death for young people. So we're just now waking up and we're realizing that we've got to put some policy in place. And this is what Dr. Murthy talked about in his advisory that he put out on mental health. And he talked about how stressed out parents are, and they are. Oh my gosh, most stressful job I've ever done. But he was saying more than that. And he was saying that we've got to really look at how we prioritize and how we value mental health. And when it's hitting an 11-year-old that has access to a weapon that can go kill 2 adults, or even a 14-year-old that goes and kills 4 people and injures 9 more, we have a problem.
Leigh Richardson, thanks for being on the James Show. How do they find you outside of WBAP?
The good old-fashioned website, thebrainperformancecenter.com, or on LinkedIn.